Have you ever walked into your garden in the quiet morning, looked at a peach tree you have cared for year after year, and felt that small ache of disappointment? The leaves look healthy, the canopy is full and green, the branches seem alive with promise. But when you look closer, there are hardly any fruits. And you begin to wonder, why does this tree look so strong, yet give so little back? If you have been feeding your peach tree the same way every season, hoping that this year will finally be different, but still ending up with frustration instead of a basket full of peaches, you are not the only one. Many home gardeners face this exact problem. And today, we are going to look at what is really happening beneath the soil and inside the tree, so we can stop repeating the same mistakes. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, where we dig into the real relationship between soil, plants, and the way we care for the living systems around us. Today, we are going to unpack one of the most popular gardening claims spreading online. Just 1 cup of wood ash or Epsom salt, and your peach tree will explode with fruit all year round. It sounds simple, almost too good to ignore. 1 cup from the fireplace, 1 scoop from a bag in the garden shed. A quick fix for a tree that refuses to fruit. But as someone who has spent years sharing practical gardening and soil care lessons, I can tell you this clearly. Trees do not produce fruit because of slogans. They respond to balance, timing, soil chemistry, root health, climate, and care. So the real question is this: can 1 cup of wood ash or Epsom salt truly override the natural laws that guide a peach tree's life cycle? Or, in chasing an easy miracle, could we actually be damaging the very soil we are trying to improve? Today, we are not just repeating textbook advice. We are stepping into the real world of stone fruit growing, where every choice matters. You will learn what wood ash really does in the soil, what Epsom salt can and cannot fix, why timing can separate a barren tree from a productive one, and which common mistakes may quietly be holding your peach tree back. But this is also more than a lesson about fertilizer. A peach tree teaches us something deeper. It reminds us that healthy growth is rarely forced. It comes from balance, patience, observation, and respect for the natural rhythm of life. So settle in, bring your curiosity, and let's take a closer look at the hidden world of your peach tree. And if you enjoy practical, real-world gardening lessons that help you grow with more confidence every week, make sure to subscribe and join our Earthly Delights community. Let's begin. Part 1. The anatomy of a modern horticultural myth. In today's fast-moving digital world, gardeners are constantly being offered shortcuts. We see words like hack, miracle, and secret everywhere, each one promising a huge harvest with almost no effort. And the algorithms know exactly what catches our attention. They love the phrase, just 1 cup. It sounds simple, doesn't it? 1 cup feels fair, easy, affordable, and almost harmless. But after years of working with soil, fruit trees, and home growers, I can tell you this: nature does not respond to clickbait. A peach tree does not set fruit because of a catchy headline. It responds to chemistry, timing, balance, root health, and the real condition of the soil. When we look closely at this viral idea of the 1 cup miracle, we find something interesting. It is not always completely made up. Often, it begins with a piece of real agricultural knowledge, but then that knowledge gets stripped of its context and turned into a social media trick. Yes, in professional orchard care, growers sometimes use measurements like 1 cup as a practical guide. For example, some extension recommendations may suggest 1 cup of a balanced fertilizer, but only for a specific age of tree, during a specific stage of growth, and often split between precise spring windows. Even well-known grower formulas that use cup measurements are not random. They are carefully balanced blends with several ingredients, designed for established trees with particular needs. The problem begins when we take one ingredient, such as wood ash or Epsom salt, and pour it around a peach tree without first understanding what the soil actually lacks. That breaks one of the oldest and most important principles in agriculture, the law of the minimum. This principle tells us that a plant's growth is not controlled by the nutrient it has in abundance, but by the nutrient that is most limited. Think of it like a wooden barrel. Each stave of the barrel represents one nutrient: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, and others. If one stave is shorter than all the rest, the barrel can only hold water up to that lowest point. So if your soil is short on nitrogen, or your tree lacks zinc, Adding more potassium from wood ash will not solve the real problem. The system still leaks at its weakest point. This is why guessing can be so dangerous. When we throw a large amount of one element into the root zone, we are not automatically feeding the tree. We may be upsetting the soil's delicate nutrient balance, interfering with cation exchange, increasing the risk of toxicity, and even locking out nutrients the tree desperately needs. And maybe there is a lesson here beyond the orchard. How often do we look for one magic habit, one supplement, one trick, or one quick solution, while ignoring the deeper weakness in the foundation? In the garden, as in life, the real question is not always, what can I add? Sometimes the better question is, what is truly missing? Part 2. The Fire in the Hearth. Wood ash chemistry and the pH roller coaster. Now let's talk about wood ash. If you have a fireplace, a wood stove, or a fire pit, it can feel like you are holding a free garden resource in your hands. And in the right situation, wood ash really can be useful. When wood burns, the organic carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur mostly escape as gases. What remains in that soft gray ash is the concentrated mineral skeleton of the tree. Wood ash is often rich in calcium carbonate, which may make up a large part of its total weight. It can also contain potassium carbonate, commonly called potash, along with smaller amounts of magnesium, phosphorus, sulfur, and trace minerals. Because it contains soluble carbonates, wood ash works as a fast-acting liming material. In simple terms, it can raise soil pH much more quickly than many gardeners realize. If your soil is strongly acidic, especially below about pH 5.5, wood ash can sometimes be helpful. It can reduce acidity, raise the pH, and supply potassium and calcium in forms that peach tree roots may absorb fairly quickly. For the right soil, at the right dose, it can be a useful amendment. But here is where many home gardeners get into trouble. What if your soil is already neutral, or even slightly alkaline? That is when the beautiful garden remedy can become a serious problem. Peach trees are quite particular about soil acidity. They usually perform best in a fairly narrow pH range, roughly between 6.0 and 6.5. If your soil is already near 6.5 or above, and you add wood ash without testing, you can push the soil into alkaline territory. Once that happens, the chemistry changes quickly. High pH can create what gardeners often call nutrient lockout. The soil may still contain iron, zinc, manganese, and other essential micronutrients, but those nutrients become chemically tied up and unavailable to the roots. The tree is surrounded by food it cannot use. That is when you may see leaves turning pale yellow while the veins remain green, a symptom often linked with interveinal chlorosis. In peach trees, this can also show up as weak growth and small, unhealthy-looking leaves. The sad part is that the gardener thought they were feeding the tree, but the treatment may have made the tree hungrier. There is also an old practice of piling wood ash around the base of a tree to discourage pests such as peach borers. A dry ring of ash might create a temporary physical barrier for some crawling insects, but once rain or irrigation hits that ash, it dissolves. Then you can get a sharp alkaline spike right at the root flare, where young roots and trunk tissue are most sensitive. That can lead to chemical stress, root burn, and more harm than benefit. Wood ash teaches us a powerful lesson. Something natural is not automatically safe in every situation. The same material can be medicine or poison depending on the soil it touches. Good gardening is not about copying a trick blindly. It is about understanding the condition of your ground before you decide what it needs. Part 3. The Silent Battleground of Cations. Why excess magnesium suffocates calcium. Now let's turn to another favorite remedy in online gardening circles. Epsom salt. Chemically, Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. It dissolves easily in water. It is inexpensive, and it is often promoted as a cure for almost everything, from yellow leaves to poor growth. But as with wood ash, the danger is not always the material itself. The danger is using it without knowing whether the tree actually needs it. To understand this, we have to look at the quiet nutrient competition happening in the soil solution around the roots. Plant roots absorb nutrients as dissolved ions. Positively charged ions are called cations, and they enter the plant through specific pathways in the root membranes. The important detail is that calcium and magnesium, both divalent cations, often compete for similar entry routes. They are like two travelers trying to pass through the same narrow doorway at the same time. Magnesium is not bad. In fact, it is essential. It sits at the center of the chlorophyll molecule, helps drive photosynthesis, and supports the movement of carbohydrates from leaves toward developing fruit. A peach tree needs magnesium, but it does not need unlimited magnesium. In many healthy soils, especially soils regularly improved with compost and organic matter, magnesium is already present in sufficient amounts. When a gardener pours a concentrated dose of Epsom salt into the root zone, the soil suddenly receives a large wave of soluble magnesium. If the soil did not need it, that excess magnesium can interfere with calcium uptake. And for a peach tree, calcium is not a minor detail. Calcium is like structural concrete inside the plant. It supports cell wall strength, fruit firmness, and the overall integrity of developing tissue. Unlike some nutrients, calcium does not move easily to wherever the plant wants it. It enters mainly through active root tips and moves upward through the water stream in the xylem, pulled by transpiration from the leaves. So when excess magnesium limits calcium absorption, the fruit can suffer. In tomatoes, many gardeners recognize this problem as blossom end rot. In peaches, poor calcium balance can reduce fruit firmness, weaken storage quality, contribute to internal breakdown during ripening, and make the tree more vulnerable to stress and cold injury. There is another issue too. Excess magnesium sulfate does not simply disappear. With repeated use, it can build up in the upper soil, increase salinity, draw moisture away from fine roots, and add unnecessary dissolved salts to the water moving downward through the soil profile. So when we try to force a tree to grow faster, greener, or bushier with a quick chemical fix, we may actually weaken the structure that supports its fruit. It is a reminder that more is not always better. In the garden, abundance without balance can become a hidden form of stress. And perhaps the same is true in our own lives. Sometimes the things we keep adding, believing they will make us stronger, are quietly blocking the deeper foundations we truly need. Part 4. The Symphony of Synergies: Nitrogen, Potassium, and Kyoto's Bimodal Rhythm. In scientific fruit growing, we never look at nutrients as isolated pieces. A peach tree is not asking for one random ingredient poured around its roots. It is asking for balance, timing, and the right relationships between nutrients. When elements are applied in the right ratio at the right stage of growth, they support each other. Their combined effect on tree health, fruit quality, and yield can be much stronger than what any single nutrient could do alone. Take nitrogen and potassium as an example. Nitrogen is like the gas pedal for vegetative growth. It helps the tree push new shoots, leaves, and green tissue. But nitrogen cannot do its job properly if potassium is lacking. Potassium helps move nitrates through the xylem and up into the leafy canopy, where the tree can use them to build proteins, sugars, and strong new growth. So if you apply a heavy dose of nitrogen to soil that is low in potassium, the tree may not become stronger. Instead, the leaves can become weak, watery, and more vulnerable to pests and disease. That is why feeding a tree is never just about adding more. It is about adding what fits the whole system. Phosphorus and potassium also work together in an important way. They help the tree build a dense, fibrous root system. And when the roots are strong, the tree has more surface area to search for water, absorb minerals, and pull trace nutrients from deeper parts of the soil. A peach tree with strong roots always has a better chance of carrying a heavy crop than a tree living on shallow, weak growth. But here is the most beautiful part of the science. Your peach tree's nutritional needs do not stay the same all year. They move with the seasons. They rise, fall, and shift like a rhythm. A study from Kyoto Prefecture University followed the mineral levels in peach leaves throughout the year. The researchers found that nitrogen and phosphorus in the foliage did not remain constant. Instead, they followed a bimodal pattern, peaking twice in the year, especially in May and September. These two peaks match the peach tree's two main vegetative flushes. In spring, the tree pushes fresh growth, opens buds, and builds new leaves. Later, after harvest, it begins rebuilding strength and preparing the wood and buds that will matter for the next season. At the same time, as late summer harvest approaches, potassium and phosphorus levels in the leaves can drop to their lowest point. That does not mean the tree has stopped needing them. It means the tree is moving them. These nutrients are mobile inside the plant, and the peach tree pulls them out of the leaves and sends them into the ripening fruit to support sugar buildup, cell expansion, flavor, and final fruit quality. This is why timing is everything. To work with this natural rhythm, professional fruit growers often split their fertilizer applications. One portion is applied in late April to support bud break and the spring flush. The next portion is applied in late May to feed the developing fruit and encourage the growth of next year's fruiting wood. And there is one golden rule every grower should remember. Do not fertilize heavily in late summer or fall. When you apply nitrogen or strong nutrients too late in the season, you send the tree the wrong signal. Instead of slowing down and preparing for winter, it may push soft, tender new growth. That late growth does not have enough time to harden before the first frost. The result can be winter injury, weakened branches, and a greater risk of wood-boring pests. A peach tree understands the seasons better than we do. It knows when to grow, when to pour energy into fruit, and when to pull that energy back into the roots and wood for rest. Our job is not to force constant production. Our job is to support the right process at the right time. In the orchard, just like in life, there is a season for active growth and a season for quiet preservation. When we ignore that rhythm, strength begins to collapse from the inside. Part 5. Deciduous Rhythms and the Genetic Blueprint. This brings us to the biological truth that completely breaks the viral claim of peach trees producing fruit all year round. Peaches are temperate woody perennials. They did not evolve as machines that can bloom, fruit, and repeat endlessly without pause. Over millions of years, they developed a survival system that helps them live through cold winters. That system is called the dormancy cycle. In autumn, as days become shorter and temperatures begin to drop, the tree's internal chemistry changes. Hormonal pathways trigger the buildup of abscisic acid inside the leaf and flower buds. This places the tree into a deep resting state known as endodormancy. Once the tree enters this state, the buds are locked. They cannot simply wake up, flower, or leaf out because of one warm day or one cup of fertilizer. They must first receive a specific amount of cold exposure. This cold requirement is measured in chill units, or chilling hours, usually counted as the hours the tree spends between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 45 degrees Fahrenheit, or 0 degrees Celsius. Many standard temperate peach varieties need around 600 to 1,000 chilling hours before they can break dormancy properly. If you plant one of these standard varieties in a subtropical or tropical region where warm weather continues all year, the tree never receives the cold signal it needs. It may bloom poorly, leaf out unevenly, grow weakly, and eventually become exhausted because its natural cycle has been disrupted. To grow peaches in warmer climates, breeders had to change the genetic blueprint. Through years of careful breeding, institutions such as the University of Florida developed low-chill peach varieties. Cultivars like UF Sun, UF Best, Florida Prince, and Tropic Beauty can break dormancy with far fewer chill units, often under 150 to 200. These low-chill trees allow growers in subtropical Florida and the tropical highlands of Puerto Rico to produce beautiful, high-quality peaches in climates where traditional peach varieties would struggle. But even with these low-chill varieties, one thing remains true. A single deciduous peach tree cannot produce fruit continuously all year. It is physically and biologically impossible. The fruiting process follows a sequence. The tree must bloom. The flowers must be pollinated. The fruit must develop for a specific period of time, often around 80 days for early varieties like UF Sun. After harvest, the tree must recover, rest, and form new buds for the next cycle. So when someone says a peach tree can produce all year round because of one cup of fertilizer, they are misunderstanding what a peach tree really is. It is not a factory that can be plugged in and run without stopping. It is a living system shaped by climate, genetics, dormancy, flowering, fruiting, and renewal. And this lesson reaches beyond the garden. Why do we expect a tree to produce without rest, when we ourselves cannot stay productive forever without recovery? True abundance does not come from endless output. It comes from respecting the cycle of growth, rest, and renewal. Part 6. The heat-induced blind node and the price of forced seasons. Even when low-chill peach varieties are used, trying to push a peach tree into continuous production in hot tropical conditions can trigger a serious biological response known as the blind node phenomenon. Peach trees form their flower buds and vegetative buds during the summer and autumn of the previous year. That means next season's bloom is being decided long before the flowers appear. During this important bud formation period, temperature plays a major role. Research conducted across central and southwest Florida showed a clear connection between high temperatures and blind nodes. When average temperatures rise too high, especially in August, the number of blind nodes can increase sharply. A blind node is a point on the branch where a bud should have formed but did not. Instead of producing a leaf bud, a flower bud, or a mixed bud, that space remains empty. Every empty node is lost potential for future growth and fruit. Persistent summer heat disrupts the delicate biochemical signals needed for bud differentiation. As a result, peach trees grown in warmer southern locations often produce fewer mixed nodes than trees grown in cooler northern areas. Mixed nodes are especially valuable because they carry the potential for both leaves and flowers. This heat-induced bud failure creates a natural ceiling on the tree's productivity. It is the tree's way of saying, "The conditions are too stressful, and I cannot carry more than this." Now, in some equatorial highland regions of Venezuela and Colombia, commercial growers have found ways to force peach orchards to produce 2 or even 3 crops per year. But they do not do this with a simple home remedy. They do it through an aggressive, highly controlled system of cultural and chemical manipulation. First, immediately after harvest, growers may spray the trees with caustic defoliants, such as zinc sulfate or sodium chlorate, to force premature leaf drop. This artificial stripping imitates a sudden autumn and shocks the tree into a short, forced rest period. Next, irrigation is completely stopped for several weeks. This severe drought stress halts vegetative growth and pushes the flower buds toward maturity. Then, because the climate does not provide enough natural chilling, growers may spray the bare branches with synthetic dormancy-breaking materials, such as hydrogen cyanamide or mineral oil. These treatments force the buds to wake up and bloom in a more synchronized way. By dividing the orchard into separate blocks and staggering this cycle, commercial growers can harvest peaches across more of the year. But this forced year-round production comes with a heavy ecological and financial price. When a peach tree is pushed into continuous growth in a humid tropical environment, the orchard becomes a perfect home for diseases such as brown rot and powdery mildew. To protect the crop, growers may need to apply many fungicide sprays every year, sometimes dozens of treatments. This creates a chemical-heavy, expensive, and unsustainable system. It exhausts the tree, places pressure on the soil, increases disease management costs, and is completely impractical for a backyard garden. The warning is clear. We can force nature to produce outside its normal season, but we will pay for it through stress, disease, chemical dependence, and weaker systems. The wiser path is to work with the tree's rhythm, not against it. And perhaps the same is true in our own lives. When we remove every boundary and demand constant performance, the hidden cost eventually appears as burnout, exhaustion, and the artificial things we use just to keep going. Part 7. Night Raiders and the Fortress of Copper. Integrated snail management. As we move away from chemical dependence, we also have to think carefully about how to protect our peach trees in a more natural and intelligent way. In warm, humid gardens, one of the most overlooked threats to ripe peaches does not fly, buzz, or swarm. It makes no sound at all. It moves slowly through the dark. You may wake up one morning, walk out to your tree, and find peaches that were almost perfect the day before, now marked with shallow scraped holes. The skin looks damaged, the surface may be sticky, and somewhere nearby, you notice that shiny trail of slime. That is usually the quiet night work of snails. Snails are opportunistic feeders. They are especially attracted to ripening peaches because the skin is tender, the flesh is sweet, and the shaded, moist canopy of a well-watered tree gives them an ideal place to survive. They do not need to destroy the whole fruit to ruin your harvest. A few feeding scars are enough to invite rot, insects, and disappointment. The reason many backyard growers miss the problem is simple. Snails are most active at night. During the day, they hide under pots, mulch, fallen leaves, boards, weeds, or any cool, damp shelter they can find. So by the time the damage appears, many people assume insects are responsible and start spraying contact insecticides that do very little to solve the real issue. But the deeper problem is not just the snail. The snail is often a sign that the environment around the tree is too moist, too shaded, and too cluttered. If the lower canopy is touching the ground, if fallen fruit is left to rot, And if mulch or debris stays damp near the trunk, you are creating a perfect pathway and shelter system for them. Instead of reaching immediately for toxic baits that may harm pets, beneficial life, and soil health, a better approach is integrated management. One useful first line of defense is copper around the trunk. A clean band of copper tape or copper strip placed around the lower trunk can help stop snails from climbing into the canopy. When a snail's moist body contacts copper, a mild chemical reaction creates an unpleasant electrochemical sensation. It does not need to kill the snail. It simply discourages it from crossing. In that way, copper acts almost like a natural boundary, turning the snail away before it reaches the fruit. But copper alone is not enough if the rest of the garden is inviting them in. Keep the lower branches pruned up so there are no bridges from grass, weeds, stakes, nearby plants, or structures into the canopy. Water carefully, and when possible, allow the surface of the soil to dry between waterings. Remove damaged and fallen fruit quickly, because that fruit becomes a food source and a signal that the tree is easy to invade. This is the kind of gardening I trust most, working with physics, biology, and good sanitation instead of starting a chemical war. To protect what is valuable, we do not always need to destroy the pest. Sometimes we simply need to remove the invitation, close the pathways, and build clear, smart boundaries. Part 8. The Master Orchardist Blueprint. Calibrated feeding and long-term care. So how do we bring all of this together into a practical routine for a home peach tree? The answer is not to copy viral single-ingredient tricks. The answer is to build a balanced program based on testing, timing, nutrient synergy, and long-term soil health. A productive peach tree does not come from one random cup of wood ash or one heavy dose of Epsom salt. It comes from knowing what the tree actually needs and applying it in a way the roots can use. For established fruit trees, some experienced growers use carefully balanced blends rather than isolated ingredients. A typical calibrated mix may include a fast nitrogen source, such as ammonium sulfate, to help wake the tree in early spring, soil sulfur, where pH needs to be lowered, a modest amount of Epsom salt, only when magnesium is actually useful, superphosphate to support roots and fruit development, and cottonseed meal as a slower organic nitrogen source for steadier foliage growth. The key word here is balanced. None of these materials should be treated like magic. Each one has a purpose, and each one can create problems if used in the wrong soil, at the wrong dose, or at the wrong time. That is why the mixture must be applied carefully, not dumped against the trunk or scattered casually without thought. For a young tree that has been planted for 1 full year, the amount should be light. For a 2-year-old tree, the rate can be increased moderately. For older established trees, application is often adjusted according to trunk diameter, because a larger tree has a larger root system and greater nutrient demand. The best place to apply fertilizer is around the drip line, not piled at the base of the trunk. The drip line is where many of the active feeder roots are working. Applying nutrients there helps the tree absorb them more efficiently and reduces the risk of burning sensitive tissue near the trunk. Timing also matters. Late winter to very early spring, before strong new growth appears, is often a useful window because moisture can help move nutrients into the root zone just as the tree begins waking up. Feeding at the right time supports bud break, spring growth, and early fruit development. Feeding too late, especially in late summer or fall, can push soft growth when the tree should be preparing for rest. But mineral feeding is only one side of the story. Long-term orchard health depends on organic matter and soil life. A thin top dressing of good compost or aged manure around the drip line in spring or fall can help improve soil structure, moisture balance, microbial activity, and slow nutrient release. Beneficial organisms, such as mycorrhizal fungi, can also support the root system by helping the tree access nutrients and build stronger connections in the soil. And above all, never guess. A professional soil test every 2 to 3 years is one of the smartest investments a gardener can make. It tells you your pH, your nutrient levels, and where the real shortages or excesses are. Without that information, you are only guessing. And guessing is how gardeners accidentally over-apply the very materials that later damage the tree. A good peach program is not dramatic. It is steady, measured, and observant. Test the soil, feed according to need, apply at the right time, build organic matter, protect the roots. That is how an orchard becomes productive year after year. The harvest of patience. At the end of the day, gardening is not about forcing nature to obey us. It is about learning to listen to the quiet language of the soil, the roots, the leaves, and the seasons. A perfect, juicy, sun-warmed peach is not created by 1 cup of wood ash or 1 quick spoonful of Epsom salt. It is the result of a healthy system, balanced soil, strong roots, clean water, proper timing, good airflow, enough rest, and patient care all come together before that fruit ever reaches your hand. When we rush the process and demand constant production, we do not create true abundance. We create weakness. We create stress. We invite disease, nutrient imbalance, and breakdown from the inside out. A garden teaches us to slow down. It reminds us that some of the most important growth happens where we cannot see it. In the quiet soil, in the resting roots, in the stored energy of winter, in the preparation before spring bloom. Patience is not doing nothing. Patience is active trust, guided by observation and good care. I hope this journey has helped you see your peach tree in a deeper way. Go out to your garden, touch the soil, look carefully at the leaves, notice the shape of the branches, the moisture around the roots, and the rhythm of the tree. Very often, the plant is already telling you what it needs. We simply have to become patient enough to listen. Thank you for spending this time with me here at Earthly Delights. If this lesson helped you understand your peach tree better, hit the like button, share it with another grower, and leave a comment below. Tell me whether your peach tree is thriving right now or whether you are still working through a difficult season. I read and appreciate every comment. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and care for your soil and trees with patience, balance, and love. I'll see you in the next video.